Hi, it's Bernadette Jansen from the School of Renovating. I want to thank you for being on this call tonight. I'm really excited to be presenting this to you. The webinar is called Zero to Hero, How to Fund Your Renovating Business. Now, this is in response to a question I get asked a lot. How do you get started? How do you get the money together to actually do a renovation project? So I thought I would put this together to give you some insight into how I have gone about doing this. And if for anyone that doesn't know me, I started renovating about 20 years ago when my children were little. I had four children quite close together. And so while I was home with them, I actually did renovating as a hobby in my spare time. But a few years ago, I actually just made a decision to step it up a notch. What happened was I turned 50 and I realised that retirement was looming on the horizon, and if I was to continue the lifestyle that I was living, that I needed more money than I thought I did. And so I needed to actually accelerate my retirement savings. And at the same time, I was hoping to actually scale down the amount of work I did. At the time, I owned a business and I was actually quite unwell and needed to give myself a bit of a break. So renovating was the most effective way I knew, or I know, to generate really good money without having to work full time. So that's basically what I'm doing. At that time, I engaged in some more education to improve my processes, and and then I set along a path of really fast tracking my renovation saving, as well as living life and enjoying the product of what I do. So that's me, and so tonight I'm going to share with you a little bit about how I have gone about getting funding for my projects. The basis of this presentation is my personal experience, so I want to make it really clear I am not a financial planner. I am an ex-nurse and a mother who has taken on renovating with vengeance. So this presentation is designed to get you thinking about different options that might work for you for financing your renovation projects, if that's the course you're planning to take. I want to be really clear that there's no such thing as get-rich-quick schemes. So if any of my comments suggest that that's the path I'm on, then I want to clarify, because if you want to make serious money from renovating, you need to be prepared to do the groundwork. You don't just dash in and buy a property. If you do that, you'll increase your risk level quite significantly, and it's just not recommended. Okay, and the other thing is, before you get started, get some specialist advice. Consult your financial planner and or accountant, preferably specialising in property. And if you're thinking about going down a particular path, get some advice from them on the strategies that you're thinking about using in relation to your own personal circumstances, because what works for one person may not be exactly right for the next, because you will have different circumstances, and they're the people that know your history and your background and will be able to advise accurately. The other thing I want to say is, often it's the most cost effective to operate under a company structure when you're renovating for profit, to take advantage, particularly in Australia. I know we've got some people overseas on this call, and I want to welcome you. And so certainly in Australia, there are tax advantages with operating under a company, but once again, get the advice from your financial planner and or accountant. You also need to get advice on risk management, including how to avoid, now this is a bit of a tongue twister, cross-collateralisation. Basically what that means is, if you buy a property and you use the equity in another property to secure the loan, then basically you're putting all your eggs in one basket, and it's not a smart thing to do. So if you seek advice from these consultants, they will help you to set it up so in the most low risk way possible. Okay, so tonight I'm going to talk about 3 ways to fund a renovation. The groundwork you need to do before you go anywhere near a lending body. Yes, some of the things that you can do, or one in particular, to make yourself look a lot better on paper, and how to put a funding proposal together so that a lending body will actually go for it. Now, where to start? Obviously, the more money you have to get started, the easier it will be. And, you know, but if you don't have as much money as you need, then don't let that get in the way. You just need to work a bit harder at it. Start small and work your way up. I just put this diagram up because what I have found is once you make a decision to tackle a particular problem or go a certain way, and you start moving out of your comfort zone to take actions that are consistent with that decision, funny thing happens. Things start to appear, solutions start to appear, and you know, I like to call it magic, but to be perfectly true, it's yeah, okay, so it is magic. So that's where the magic happens. Once you move out of your comfort zone and start taking action, then you'll find things starting to happen that you didn't imagine would happen. So I highly recommend that you take on moving out of your comfort zone and start taking actions consistent with the decisions that you've made about your financial future. Now, the first type of funding I want to talk about, this is the first of the 3 types, is traditional funding. So we're talking about banks, building societies, whatever. And before you, well, firstly, before you even look at a property, you need to get pre-approval. But I'm not going to go down that path now. I'm just really basically talking about an overview of getting funding. So before I went near any organisation, I would shop around and check out all the different lenders and their different products and their lending criteria, because they do vary quite a bit. You'll go with the bank. We go with the bank because we've got a great relationship with our bank, and they know our track record, they know how we operate, and they will help us get deals over the line that we may not be able to achieve with another organisation. Some people prefer brokers, and they are different in that they actually broker loans, obviously, and they have access to a range of different lending bodies, and consequently they have a much bigger range of products to select from, and they actually act on your behalf. Sometimes, most times, the broker's not as close to the action. They're not actually involved in the decision-making process. So from that point of view, it's quite different from when you're dealing with a bank. But it really is what works for you. Both equity and serviceability are taken into account when you are applying for funding. Equity being the assets you have to secure the loan against, and the serviceability being your ability to actually pay the loan. A statement of anticipated rental income will help if you are help with serviceability. Actually, it's standard procedure to put one in a proposal, but certainly in my situation, when renovating is all I do, so I don't actually have a weekly paycheck. I get a paycheck at the end of a job. Well, the bank doesn't look on that as being very secure, which is ridiculous, but they don't. Like, they like to see you going to a job each day and getting a paycheck at the end of the week. And so, you know, they favour my income. Well, they used to, and not so bad now, but they favour they basically, you know, look disapprovingly at my income because it's not regular. It's one-offs at the end of a project. So adding the rental statement actually helps the serviceability. So basically, you go to your real estate agent and ask him to write it, and he'll write a letter saying he thinks the property will achieve this much rent, even though you're not planning to rent it out, you're planning to actually renovate it. But that will be taken into account in the calculations. Okay, so I've got a scenario, a hypothetical scenario here of a renovation project where the property purchase price is $500,000. So it's a standard loan that we're taking out, so the bank will lend 80%. If we're going for a no-docs loan, which is one where your financial history is such that you are not able to produce enough documentation to satisfy the bank, they may approve a low-docs loan, which basically means they'll, in most cases, lend up to 60%. Okay, so but in this case, we're talking about 80%. So you're going to require a 20% deposit, which is another $100,000, plus your acquisition and renovation costs. For this renovation, we're talking about around about $100,000. So once again, we get 80% of the funding for the property, and the remaining 20% plus costs we would need to find. So we always go for interest-only loan when we're renovating. There is absolutely no point in paying principal off over a short term, and in actual fact, it's way better to actually keep our outgoings to a minimum. What we have done is we would take out a line of credit on the equity in our own home for the remaining $200,000. That will then enable us to work with cash as opposed to having the bank having to approve everything that we spend. That's not a good way to operate if you can possibly avoid it, and gives us the money we need to finish the project. So yes, so it means that we don't have to produce cash, and we can keep our cash aside as a buffer. Okay, so that's the first way. So the next way, same scenario, vendor finance. So a motivated vendor may offer all or some finance, and they may allow you to finance a lot through vendor finance, particularly if they know it's for a short term, or they may say pay 80% now and then the 20% when you sell it, something like that. So the problem with it is it will reduce their ability to negotiate the price. They're not going to discount the price plus finance the project. Pardon me. It reduces the holding costs, and consequently it reduces the risk as well. So it's actually quite a good scenario if you can manage to swing it. There are additional legal costs because you'll need to have a contract or a special agreement drawn up for it, and these need to be worn by the project. But it can mean you can start with very little money. So that's one type of financing that to look out for. And the next type is basically a version of the traditional financing, but when you don't have enough equity to be able to stump up the further 20% deposit and costs, you actually find someone that can and I would say a project partner. Generally, you can get the funding for the 80%. And think about who you know that might be interested in this and has property with sufficient equity. I'm suggesting parents because it needs to be someone that you trust and that trusts you, and someone that you can work with. They may be able to secure the remaining $200,000 without any out-of-pocket costs to them. Clearly, you're responsible for managing the holding costs, and also it needs to be a win-win. So you need to obviously share the profit with them in a way that's agreeable to both parties. Otherwise, you may find that they're not overly keen on the idea. So that's 3 ways, first up, that you can use to fund a project.